Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to News Dose, and hope you're all ready for some more Xbox Game Pass games, because, well, you're getting some. That's right, they just revealed some more games. So not only do you get Pentiment today, which is reviewing very, very well with an 86 overall score on Metacritic, but now 8 more games are coming your way. I mean, I say it all the time, but you know what? It's true. It's just hard to keep up with Xbox Game Pass, and I'll show you exactly why here in just a little bit as I cover those 8 new additions. Also, the rumor mill, speculation, or whatever you want to call it, the Switch Successor coming sooner rather than later seems more and more realistic by the day as some surprising results was posted up yesterday. Before we get into anything though, you know what to do. Whack those buttons below, like, subscribe, and of course, that most important bell. That way you never miss another video again. Let's just go and jump right into things, though, starting off with Call of Duty on PlayStation. I mean, if this wasn't already very, just absolutely crystal clear by this point, Call of Duty will remain on PlayStation. I mean, I really have no idea why this question needs to consistently be asked about every other week, but I mean, here we are. It keeps happening. This time, though, the question coming from Decoder Podcast as Phil Spencer was asked about the situation on there. And one thing the interviewer did was they said that one way you could get this on PlayStation is by allowing them to stream it. But then Phil Spencer quickly interrupted and said this: native Call of Duty on PlayStation, not linked to them having to carry Game Pass, not streaming. If they want a streaming version of Call of Duty, we could do that as well, just like we do in our own consoles. There's nothing behind my back. It is the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 doing great on PlayStation, doing great on Xbox. The next game, the next game, native on the platform, not having to subscribe to Game Pass. Sony does not have to take Game Pass on their platform to make that happen. There's nothing hidden. We want to continue to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation without any kind of weird, I figured out the gotcha. So, I mean, there it is. Once again, he's just kind of laying it all out there. He's being very, absolutely crystal clear here. Call of Duty will remain multi-platform for PlayStation. He also makes it clear that this includes future Call of Duty games as well, not just this year's Call of Duty, not just next year's, but the next. You kind of see where he's going with this. Now, that's kind of the thing that's popped up here recently. It was discovered that this game operates on some type of contract that could be ending in around 2027 or something like that. And technically, after that contract ends, well, Xbox could pull it off of PlayStation, but they have been very adamant that that's not what they're doing here. See, the thing is, and I've talked about this before, but Minecraft, that is another game that has remained multi-platform even after Microsoft acquired it. And the thing about that game is I'm sure that it probably operates on a contract as well. It's just a lot of people want to kind of ignore that entire situation. It's actually pretty clear that they absolutely do intend on treating it like Minecraft and just keep it multi-platform. In their words, they want to bring it to more platforms, not less. I think Sony actually knows that. I believe they're being a little disingenuous as they're just kind of afraid of this acquisition as a whole, especially with the inclusion of Xbox Game Pass. But as far as regulators will continue to ask the question, is Microsoft being true to their words, and will they keep Call of Duty on PlayStation even after that contract is up? Well, Phil Spencer, he actually responded to this as well by saying this idea that we would write a contract that says the word forever in it, I think, is a little bit silly. But to make a longer-term commitment that Sony would be comfortable with, regulators would be comfortable with, I have no issue with that at all. Now, we've actually talked about this before. There might be some concessions. At the end of the day, I think the deal will go through, just because I really do believe Microsoft does have a good case here. I mean, a lot of the things that Sony's complaining about, they do themselves. But Microsoft might be willing to make some small concessions here to get the ball rolling. And Phil Spencer even says that here, as he's willing to extend that Call of Duty contract even further. So there it is. I'd like to say that this puts this ridiculous debate to rest. I mean, it's pretty obvious by this point, but in reality, I imagine we're probably going to be talking about this exact same topic here in just a couple weeks, as somebody else will, of course, bring the question up again. Next up here, let's go and talk about Elden Ring real quick, as Bandai Namco just revealed it's sold 17.5 million units as of September 30th. Now, this is actually pretty crazy stuff for a From Software game. I mean, this game is even outpacing games like Call of Duty, and we all know just how massive that franchise is. But to see Elden Ring, a highly difficult game that doesn't hold your hand, reach the mainstream the way it has, it is such an exciting thing to see in the game industry. I posted this up on Twitter yesterday, and this might be a little bit of a side rant, but I've been playing God of War Ragnarok recently, which, as expected, is an absolutely amazing game. I love it myself, but one thing that's been a little irritating to me is the blatant and just unneeded hand-holding. Like, what's the point of puzzles in games if your companion is going to give you the answer in like 30 seconds? They don't even let you experiment in this game. They just right away tell you the answer. I don't like that. I want to be challenged and I want to figure things out myself. That's a big part of video games for me. I mean, if I'm really stuck to the point that I grow frustrated, well, that's what the game community is for. That's what the internet is for. We can help each other out. But I don't want the answer just given to me unless I specifically ask for it. Now, I know the reason that developers do this, and that's because they want to reach that mainstream crowd. But that's kind of the thing about Elden Ring. It's proving that you don't need to hold players' hands to have success. And that's exactly why I'm just so thrilled to see Elden Ring have the success that it's having, because it's not your typical mainstream game. It's challenging, and it just puts you into this engrossing world. And then they just kind of tell you, go out there and be somebody. Good luck. And that's pretty much it. It's up to you to figure things out. Like I said, though, it's just such a different game to reach that mainstream, and I want to see other developers kind of take note of that. As for Elden Ring, though, big congrats first off, but I mean, by this point, I'm just ready to jump back into this game. Hopefully, with the Game Awards next month, maybe they'll announce its DLC expansion there. Definitely crossing my fingers for that. Let's go talk about some Xbox Game Pass news, though. That's always a lot of fun. But yes, not only can you play Pentiment today, which has received high remarks, but they did also just reveal 8 more games that are coming this month in November. As you can see here, this includes Insurgency Sandstorm, Gungrave Gore, Lapin, Soccer Story, Norco, Dune, Spice Wars, Ghost Lore, and then last but not least, Darktide Warhammer. Now, I think all of this, in addition to Pentiment, I think that's actually a nice little lineup of games. No, not necessarily quite as big as last month with games like A Plague Tale Requiem and Persona 5. I mean, that's a tough act to follow, but I think that there's still some interesting games here. First up, I mean, we might as well just go and talk about Pentiment. Now, we did actually talk about this one yesterday, but just in case you missed that video, again, it did release today, and critics seem to be absolutely glowing about this game. It does have an 86 overall score on Metacritic as of this recording. Now, it is a different style of game, as it is a murder mystery set in the 16th century, and it's really a narrative adventure game. It's not like some action-packed game or anything like that, but this is coming from Josh Sawyer and Obsidian Entertainment. Yeah, the same director and studio that's brought us games like Fallout New Vegas and Pillars of Eternity. Now, we know for a fact he knows how to put a good narrative together, so you definitely might want to check out Pentiment, as you can download that one right now. Now, as for you console gamers, the big day one inclusion that I've seen garner a lot of interest is Gungrave Gore. This is like a stylish third-person shooter that mixes in melee combat, and it actually reminds me a lot of old school shooters. Now, there might actually be a good reason for that, though, because apparently this is a sequel to a bit of a cult classic that released back on the PlayStation 2 in 2002. So if you were one of those that was a big fan of that game, or if you just like old school shooters in general, well, its sequel is coming 20 long years later, and it will launch directly into Xbox Game Pass on November 22nd. This game just looks like a lot of fun, though. I mean, it gets right to the point, and it's all about being stylish, putting combos together, and just creating that maximum damage with just absolute pure chaos. I mean, if anything, I think this game looks like it'll just be a fun time, so you might want to download Gungrave Gore again on November 22nd. Then also on the PC side of things, Warhammer Darktide is set to launch day one on November 30th. Now, unfortunately, the thing about this game is that the console versions was delayed for a short while, but it will also be coming to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass sometime later down the road, so no frets there. However, if you do have PC Game Pass, then this is actually a really nice inclusion. The Warhammer series really just kind of speaks for itself. This is a good series. Darktide, though, is a cooperative focus shooter coming from the same team behind Warhammer Vermintide. Now, that was a great game, so that's already a good sign here. But this game does also look like a lot of fun, and I also think that it's a perfect fit for something like Xbox Game Pass. I always love it when they include these cooperative-based games, because if you and your friends all have Xbox Game Pass, it's just such an easy thing for everybody to just kind of jump into. And just knowing the pedigree of this series, yeah, there's a good chance that this could be one of the better cooperative games to play this holiday. So if you're on some type of holiday break over the next month or so, yeah, Darktide might be a good download here when it releases into PC Game Pass on November 30th. Now, one game, though, that I'm particularly interested in here is Soccer Story. This is yet another Day 1 launch title that's releasing directly into Game Pass on November 29th, but it is another one of those sports RPG games. We have seen these type of games be on a little bit of a rise as of recent, games like Golf Story, Dodgeball Academia, and games like that, but I think this one particularly looks really interesting. This game is set in a world where soccer has been banned, but then you, the protagonist, finds a magical soccer ball in which they set out on a grand adventure to compete and solve all kinds of physics soccer-related problems. Maybe that includes kicking a ball at incoming shark, or even something like fishing with, you guessed it, a soccer ball. I mean, why not? We apparently need fishing in every single game, but they did actually do it in a creative way this time. There actually does seem to be a lot of creativity in this game, though, just as a whole, and I'd say that this one might be one of those sleeper hits. It really just seems like on a monthly basis, there's always a couple of these smaller games that releases in the Game Pass that turns out to be pretty good. Of course, earlier this month, Ghost Song, that very much was one of those games, but I'd also say don't sleep on Soccer Story, because this one could end up being a fun time. Now, the last game here, though, that I want to touch upon is Lappin. This is yet another, as you guessed it, a Day 1 inclusion. This is a 2D platformer with a really nice animated art style to it. I don't know if it's necessarily got the most creative protagonist in the world. You play as a rabbit, but the gameplay does stand out to me. The way the mechanics work in this game kind of reminds me a little bit of something like Celeste, which, I mean, I view that as an all-time great 2D platformer. Now, to be fair, that game was excellent both in terms of its story and in its gameplay, but nonetheless, I think the gameplay does look good in Lappin. Again, not really sold on the protagonist per se, but I think the art style looks good and the gameplay looks like a lot of fun. So if you like 2D platformers, this one will release in the Game Pass tomorrow on November 16th. There you have it, though. There might not necessarily be that big blockbuster release for the second half of November, but I think there's definitely some interesting games here if you want to give them a try yourself. Let me know what you think, though. Does any of these games interest you? And if so, which ones? I think for me personally, between Ghost Song earlier this month and then also with Pentiment and really even Soccer Story, I mean, I have plenty to go through here. Now, we also got some really interesting results for October's NPD, as Matt Piscatella posted this up over on Twitter. US NPD hardware, PlayStation 5 was the best-selling video game hardware of October in both unit and dollar sales, while Xbox Series ranked second across both measures. He also pointed out that there was a decline in other hardware, more than likely, meaning for the Nintendo Switch. So this is actually quite interesting, because for such a long time, the Nintendo Switch has really been a dominant platform, just breaking records. I mean, this thing has been putting up insane numbers for such a long period of time, but it does seem like the Nintendo Switch is starting to see some slowdown. In fact, Nintendo has alluded to that themselves just earlier this month. Not only have they seen a decline year over year, but also they had to scale back their sales forecast from 21 million units sold for their fiscal year back to 19 million. Now, to be fair, that's still very, very impressive, but them scaling back their forecast has been a little bit of a trend here as well. So again, it does look like the Switch is starting to slow down. Now, to be fair, again, it is still selling incredibly well, but as you can see with this NPD, it does appear once again is on a decline, and there were some big Nintendo games launched last month, including Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope and also Bayonetta 3. Keep in mind, Splatoon 3, that also launched 1 month before, so it is seeing a slowdown despite some of those bigger releases. Now, as for the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 selling more, though, in the month of October, what's happening there really is that both of these consoles are getting more stock. It's really that simple. We talked about this last month, but it seems like some of those manufacturing issues have improved, and both Sony and Microsoft, they are seeing a big influx in consoles. I mean, you can even say the same thing for Valve and Steam Deck. People had that console reserve well into 2023, but then suddenly last month, they were able to ship everybody their Steam Deck. So it does look like some of those manufacturing issues that we've been seeing for the first 2 years of their life cycle have improved, hence the big increase for the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5. The Switch, though, this is a console that has been a little bit more readily available for quite a while, so they've been a lot more stable in how many units they can sell on a monthly basis. The reason that we're talking about all of this, though, is that this once again does bring up the question. The Switch is a nearly 6-year-old console that's starting to show its age, even with their first-party releases. Now that it is slowing down, is it time for Nintendo to prepare for that Switch successor? Should they talk about it next year in 2023? And I think that it is actually possible we hear about it as early as next year, though I don't know if that it'll necessarily be official. I'm not completely convinced it will release in 2023 because at the end of the day, slowdown or not, the Switch is still selling very, very well. So they have afforded themselves a little cushion here not to rush things, but I could see a point if they don't talk about it. There could be a chance that we start to see leaks pop up next year online. If you remember right, leading up to the Switch, there was a lot of Nintendo NX leaks, and that goes back to 2016 if I'm remembering correctly here. And the Switch released in, of course, early 2017. So I think one way or the other, there's a pretty good chance that we hear about the successor for the Switch next year. I'll tell you what, though, it'll be really interesting to see how the Nintendo Switch does this month with something like Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. With that being such a huge release, that's definitely one to watch out for, as it should tell us a lot about the state of the Switch year over year. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, now that the Game Awards revealed the Game of the Year nominees, which are you voting for? And as you can see here, the winner goes to Elden Ring with 59% of the votes. Second place goes to God of War Ragnarok with 22%. 10% of you voted for A Plague Tale Requiem. 6% of you voted for Xenoblade 3 or Stray. Unfortunately, I only have 5 choices for YouTube polls. But then here at the bottom, you have Horizon Forbidden West at 3%. Now, I actually think all of these games are absolutely excellent. I still don't necessarily know if Stray deserves to be on this list. There's a lot of other games I would have chosen over that, but it is what it is at the end of the day. All of these games are very, very good games. But yes, I am with you all on this one. Elden Ring, I mean, there's not very many games that I can think of that has hooked me the way this game has. This is just a pure game through and through. It doesn't need those cinematics to make it interesting or anything like that. This is just a good game through and through. And really, in terms of its gameplay, its world, and all of that, I think that it sits among the best that's ever been made. So I think it's kind of one of those generational type of games. It's going to be one of those games that everybody talks about all generation long just because of that's how good this game is. So yeah, I'm going to go with Elden Ring here as well. Again, I think God of War Ragnarok is an absolutely amazing game. Don't get me wrong. In most years, I'd probably give that the game of the year, but this time, I'm going to have to go with Elden Ring in this situation. That's the one that really just absolutely hooked me. Looking through the comments, though, MB Phillips said, I want it to be A Plague Tale Requiem, but I can't see it not being Elden Ring. It took the industry by storm. God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West are contenders, so they're my best bet if it's not Elden Ring. However, Plague Tale won awards that relate to all categories, so it's winning something. Honorable mention, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. And yeah, that's the thing here. I think all the games that you mentioned are absolutely excellent games, including, as you said, Shredder's Revenge. It was quietly a good year in a delayed, riddled industry. It's really hard to tell, though, what game will win Game of the Year. I was pretty sure that Red Dead Redemption 2 was going to win back in 2018, but instead, God of War actually won that one. I'll say this much, though. Every time a God of War game comes out, it gets really, really tough competition. But I think the easy bet here is that Elden Ring or God of War Ragnarok will win. Which one? That there's the big question. Who really knows? They're both amazing games, so I guess we'll see sometime here soon enough. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.